Hello and welcome to the Bible study. My name is Kent Philpott, pastor of Miller Avenue Baptist Church in Mill Valley, California. That's in the San Francisco Bay Area. All right. Well, I'm not going to be doing on Ephesians. I'm going to present the sermon that I preached on Easter Sunday, which was on the 20th, and this is just the 25th. But of course, you won't be finding this on Easter. But so I just thought I'd do it. In any case, so it's a sermon on the resurrection, and I'm working on Matthew chapter 28, verses 1 through 15. Okay, the resurrection means a raising from the dead. It is not a reincarnation. I don't know if you remember Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and Chris Christopherson and Waylon Jennings. They had that song, and it's about reincarnation. They come back. Maybe I'll come back as a drop of rain. But that's an old-time Hindu idea that developed at some point in their history. But anyway, the resurrection is not a reincarnation. It is a raising from the dead, and I'll probably be saying some things that a little bit difficult. It's a complex thing. Nobody thoroughly understands the whole thing about resurrection. Okay, we're looking at Matthew 28. I'm going to look at the first 10 verses first, and then the final 5. So, it starts out in verse 1. Now, after the Sabbath, and that would have been after sun went down on Saturday night, our Saturday night, toward the dawn of the first day of the week. That would be Sunday. The resurrection occurred on a Sunday, and that's why most churches, probably 95% of churches in the world, gather together on Sunday, because that's the resurrection day. What happened was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. What they were intending to do would have been to anoint Jesus' body. It was a custom because of the rapid deterioration of the body. And so here they are. On very early Sunday morning, probably the sun's just coming up, they go to the place where Jesus is buried. My brother Bruce and I went to Jerusalem, and on the sort of the southeast side, part of our group that we were with saw tombs. A tomb like Jesus would have been buried in. Some people say it was one of those tombs that Jesus was buried in. It would have been carved out of rock. And just standing there, you can just imagine this could be it, but there's no assurance. So they had come down to anoint the body of Jesus. It was a custom that they did in that period. Where the 11 disciples were, the 12 minus 1, Judas Iscariot, who's not there anymore. But it's Mary Magdalene here. It says Mary, the other Mary. She was the mother of James and Joseph, Joses. And Mark adds in Mark's gospel the name of Salome. In Luke's gospel, he also mentions Joanna. In John's gospel, he only mentions Mary Magdalene. So on all of the gospels, we have differences. Now, I bring that up because there was never an attempt to synchronize all the gospels. And we find this in a number of different things, and it leads to the authenticity of the New Testament, that they didn't try to balance and make it all read the same. They didn't do that. So there they are. They're coming to the tomb. They want to see the tomb. Verse 2, and behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and rolled back the stone and sat on it. Now, there was a great earthquake, and the word great in the Greek is mega, a mega earthquake. And there was an earthquake also, a great earthquake, the moment that Jesus died on the cross. We find that in other Gospels. So anyway, there was this great earthquake, and it says an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. Now, apparently this happened before the women got there. Before they got there, this had already taken place. Okay, verse 3. His appearance, I was describing the appearance of the angel. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. The word snow here would be used to express holiness. So this is what happens. They heard this, and then verse 4. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. Now, Matthew is explaining what had happened a little earlier. What had happened? There were guards placed there. There would have been Roman guards that had been assigned to make sure nobody stole Jesus' body. Guards were there, and they were. He says they trembled for fear of this angel and became like dead men. Now, it's very interesting that I've actually seen angels on two different occasions. I was going to maybe take the time and make that statement. The first one was in 1967, the first Thursday night in February of 1967, after I got work at J.C. Penney's in Corte Madera, no longer there. I was looking for the hippies. The Lord had told me, go to the Haight-Ashbury. And so I did. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And I saw a light up. It was a Methodist church. It was somebody left a light on. And all of a sudden, somebody touched me from behind and said, are you interested in religion? And I said, yes. So he took me up, and I encountered David Hoyt was the head guy at the temple, the Hindu temple on Frederick Street. And that happened, and then another time, two angels showed up at the door. I won't go into all of that. I don't have the time. But yes, there are actual angels, and I've seen them twice. So, verse 5, but the angel said to the women, do not be afraid, for I know you seek Jesus who was crucified. Now, Matthew has one angel. In John's Gospel, there are two angels. Mark says a man, and Luke says there were two men. Not one of the Gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, agree. The way it's justified pretty much is that, say, there were two. They were angels. They looked like human beings. The angels that I saw, three of them all together at two different times, looked just like people. You couldn't tell. And so, again, there was no attempt to harmonize the accounts. They were very obvious. Well into the first century, they would have noticed very easily. Each one of these gospel writers say it a little bit differently, but so likely there were two men, two angels that looked like men, but only one was doing the speaking. And so that's the way it's usually dealt with. Okay. So he says, I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. Verse 6. He is not here, he says, for he has risen as he said. Jesus had told his followers that this was going to happen. on different occasions that he was going to be killed, but that he would be raised from the dead. And so he says, they said he's not this angel isn't trying to put the ladies down, but he reminds them that he had said this. But of course, how were they going to believe that? That would be a very, very difficult time, completely unheard of. But when you're killed, you're dead. That's it. But so then the angel says, "Come, see the place where he lay." See the place where he lay. I like to remind people about the Shroud of Turin. Turin is a city in Italy. And a long time ago, many centuries ago, a shroud, a linen shroud was found, and it has the features of Jesus' face, the marks on the hands, the legs, the feet were nailed, and the pierced side. And there it is, and you can see the face. The Jesus, not a very good-looking man, ordinary-looking guy. And for many, many centuries, the Roman Catholic Church presented this, but then somebody disqualified it, and so they kind of put it away. But in more recent years, under further study, and it's very interesting, go do a Google search, Shroud of Turin, and I am convinced that that was what was covering Jesus, the typical thing that would covering, and he was just raised from the dead, and here you have all of this evidence of this individual had laid underneath it. Shroud of Turin, verse 7. Then go quickly, right now, go quickly and tell his disciples, that would have been the 11 minus Judas Iscariot, that he has risen from the dead. Now, the term, the verb that we find here is what's called a deponent verb. It means that he had been raised. He didn't raise himself. Jesus was dead. He did not raise himself. He was raised. He has risen from the dead. Matthew chapter 26:32 says, where Jesus said, "But after I have been raised." Jesus did not raise himself. He was dead. He had been raised. One of the early challenges to Christianity, Gnosticism, 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 they said Jesus didn't really die. He just appeared to have died. Not true. He literally died, and he was literally raised. And then he goes on, "And behold, he is going before you to Galilee." Now, Galilee is where they came from. One of the interesting things is, we're going to see here that Jesus is going to meet with them prior, at least twice prior, before them going up to Galilee. It's surmised that they were all from Galilee. That's up north from Jerusalem. And the son of Judah. You have Judah, Samaria, and then Galilee, up by the Sea of Galilee. And that's where they were all from. That's where Mary and Joseph, that's where Jesus lived. That he's going to go back there. And we could surmise a number of reasons why that might be safe for the disciples, because they could be targeted as well. So somehow they're in hiding. They don't come around. They're not looking for the body of Jesus where he was buried. They just have scattered in some manner or another. And he says, and tell his disciples he has risen from the dead, and behold, he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. And then the verse says, the end of that verse says, "See, I have told you." So they brought the end of the instructions. It's should be added, see, now I have told you. That angel was there to communicate that. Otherwise, they would have had no way of knowing. This was all designed so that the disciples would know, the founders of Christianity and the ladies, that Jesus had been risen from the dead. He had been dead and then risen. Verse 8. So they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy. Now that's very interesting. Fear and great joy. These two go together. The Greek word for fear is phobos. And so there was genuine fear, but there was also this incredible joy, all mixed together. And so that a very, very understandable condition to be described that these women were experiencing. Verse 8. So they departed quickly. They departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy and ran, not walked, notice ran to tell his disciples. Ran to tell his disciples. They didn't walk. Mark adds in Mark's Gospel, he says, and tell his disciples and Peter. Mark emphasizes Peter because remember, Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times. And we know in John's Gospel that Jesus took Peter aside especially to help encourage him and to reassure him. So that's what went on here in Mark's Gospel as he mentions Peter. Verse 9. And behold, Jesus met them and said, greetings. Now, the idea of met them, it was a sudden appearance. And over the centuries, readers, commentators on the passage are kind of puzzled by this. He tells them he's going to Galilee, but then all of a sudden he meets them. And so you have this sort of a strange thing that's taken place here. And it is another indication of the authenticity of the story, of the event that's being portrayed. Because you have this sort of misunderstanding here, or sort of a thing that's not connecting like you'd like it. Because he says, I'm going to see you in Galilee, but then he meets them right there in Judah, in Jerusalem. Met them and said, greetings. Greetings. So it says greetings, and it says, and they came up and took hold of his feet. They took hold of his feet. So it was a real person. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't some kind of, vision or something of that nature. They took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Now the words "and worshipped him" have puzzled me. I have been unable for many years to understand or try to get a picture of what that looked like. What does it mean that they worshipped him? Okay, they're going to be on the ground, on their knees, his feet, touching his feet. But what did they do? What else was it things that they said? We don't know. I've never been able to really grab a hold of how you would describe the word worship. Worshipped him. I'm going to imagine it was verbal. They were saying, thank you, Lord, here it is, and going on, various things that these ladies might have said. That's about the best I can do with it. Verse 10. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. One commentator said it was very similar to saying, hello, or good morning. he was welcoming them. There's various ways of explaining what Jesus is saying. Do not be afraid, except he wants them to be calm. It may be indicative that they had some fear. Wow, we've never seen anything like this before. We've never heard anything like this before. But there he was, and they had to have been stirred up inside fairly considerably, you can imagine. And so Jesus' words would be for the purpose of having them relax and be okay and not be afraid. And say, it's okay, ladies, here I am. Then it says, go and tell my brothers. The word brothers is adelphos. Tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. Could be just the 11. It could be a larger number, and so on. One of the questions I asked in the sermon here this last Sunday, I asked the question, why did Jesus appear first to the women and not to the men? And I'm glad that he appeared to the women first. In that era, women had very little standing. They were less than second-class citizens. They were treated like servants, more than equals. And so it's so interesting that Jesus appears to the women first of all. So now the second part is just a few verses, 5 verses. Matthew Gospel here, and we're going to be looking at chapter 11 through 15. And that is titled in the English Standard Version, The Report of the Guard. In another one of my Bibles, it says, the guard bribed. It was the sort of the statement for it. The guard bribed. So actually both of them kind of work. Let's say, okay, verse 11. Well, they were going, that is, they knew where the disciples were. In the home of the mother of Mark, where the Last Supper was. A home in Jerusalem had to have been a big place. There's all kinds of questions about where these might be found, where the disciples might be found. But anyway, while they were going, behold, some of the guard went into the city. Now these would be Roman soldiers that Pilate would have assigned to watch over the tomb to make sure that nobody stole the body of Jesus. Some of the guard went into the city. Not all of them. Notice some of the guard went into the city. That's Jerusalem, because the tomb is outside the city wall. Some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests all that had taken place. They didn't go to Pilate right away. They didn't do that. So these guys, because they may be afraid they could be charged with neglect of duty if the body would be gone. I mean, the rock is bowled back. It would be no time at all before people are going to see there's no body in there. What happened? These guys could have been in trouble. So they go to the chief priests. These would have been the Sadducees. These would have been the people that ran the temple. The chief priests, all that had taken place. Verse 12. And when they had assembled with the elders and taken counsel. Now, what happened is there's 2 events taking place. First, they go and report to some of the chief priests. But now the Sanhedrin, the Council of the 70, they're now together. And it says when they assembled with the elders, and the elders, we get the word Presbyterian from that, the Presbyteron, the elders taking counsel. So they all agree this is a big deal. Man, what happened here? This could be huge. And so it says they gave a a sufficient sum of money, a sufficient, a bribe, essentially. They're going to pay these guys off. They gave a sufficient sum of money to the soldiers. Now, these are Roman soldiers. And said, verse 13, tell people the disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. A little problem with that. If they were asleep, how did they know what happened? I may be going too far on that, but anyway, they want him to tell this lie. Tell people the disciples, his disciples, came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. So there you go. These guys either were going to turn and be followers of Jesus, or they had to find some reason to deny who he was. They had to have some reason because they turned away from him. They were largely responsible for his being crucified. So verse 14 says, then they say to him, and if this comes to the governor's ear, notice the if, third class condition, meaning it might come to the governor's ears, that would be Pilate. If this comes to the governor's ear, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. And keep you out of trouble. Wow. So this is what they're going to do. Verse 15. So they took the money and did as they were directed, and this story has been spread among the Jews to this day. I found a little note that Justin Martyr, in about the year 150 AD, actually talks about this very thing. Matthew, of course, is writing this gospel in the 60s. So almost 100 years later, Justin Martyr refers to this event. Okay. Very interesting stuff. I say on Resurrection Sunday, Easter Sunday, and I say it in my concluding remarks, do you realize that the very moment of our death, we will be raised from the dead, and we will be with Jesus? The scripture says two different things. That at the end of the age, Jesus will return, chronos time. At the second coming, Jesus will return. But also, in the New Testament, we find the word time as kairos. At the very moment of our death, we go to be with Jesus. Remember the thief on the cross? Jesus said to him, this day, they're going to be dead. This day, you will be with me in paradise. Okay. There you go. Come to the end of our program. So long.